Okay, sometimes the skeptics and atheists would like to think that they're rational and reasonable and logical, and it turns out they're far from it. But I'm going to show something here that defies all logic and reason, at least our level of logic and reason. Let me do a little screen share here and see if I can fix it. Here we go. Okay, I'll start with the beginning here. Wash yourselves, make yourselves clean. Put away the evil of your doings from before your eyes. Cease to do evil, learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke the oppressor, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Come now, let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall be as wool. If you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured by the sword, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. Okay, so all about logic and reason, and whether or not we even understand the ways of God or know the ways of God. Now, let me just give you a little example here. This is one of a missionary to Ecuador and her experience. I'm starting in the middle, but you can watch the whole thing. Elizabeth Elliot, A Pattern for Good is the English version, and I'll play a little bit of it.
I was living with the Auca Indians, A-U-C-A, Auca, and they had been known to be a very savage and primitive tribe, people whom no white person had ever contacted and come out alive. In fact, no other Indian tribe had ever contacted them and escaped alive. So remote that they had never seen even a stranger, let alone a white person, let alone a white woman. Here I was sitting in my hammock in, quote, the living room, unquote, of this little tiny house. It actually had 3 rooms, believe it or not. I had a bedroom and Valerie had a bedroom, and then the rest of it was sort of living room, kitchen, dining room. And sitting on the floor beside my hammock was a man by the name of Gikita, a naked man wearing around his hips a string. Now, of course, when I first went in to live with these Indians called the Aucas, I asked the question that any foreigner would ask: why do you wear that string? And in utter astonishment and surprise, he looked at me and he said, well, you certainly wouldn't expect us to go around naked. All of them wore just a string. And I mean a string. I don't mean a G-string. I mean literally a piece of string around their hips. Well, Gikita was sitting there quite at home on the floor of my little house, holding in his hand a tiny little plastic microphone, which was attached to a very small tape recorder. This was in the very beginnings of tape recorders, and this was a very primitive little instrument compared to the beautiful, finely tuned ones that we can buy today, and it ran on 4 standard flashlight batteries. It was amazing to me how these Indians had taken to mechanical things without any difficulty at all, and they enjoyed very much talking into the microphone of this tape recorder. And the sort of things that Gikita was saying into that microphone were "Buttu watta tanamo tominani chuworinani." Yeah. Now, can you imagine writing that down? This was a language which had never been written down in any form. Part of my object in becoming a missionary was to go to tribes which had unwritten languages with a view ultimately to reducing those languages to writing in order that I might translate the Bible into those languages. And this was the third Indian tribal language that I had had the opportunity of working on, but this was by far the most difficult. It was not a dialect, it was a language, and it had no more connection with the other languages that I had learned than Chinese has with English. And one of the difficulties that I was up against was that no Indian was ever prepared to repeat precisely the same way any phrase or any single word. In the first place, they thought that everybody is born speaking Auca. Did it ever occur to you that none of us remembers the process of learning our mother tongue? And if you are so isolated and so uneducated as to never have heard a foreign language or never have heard of a foreign language, you would imagine that this is something with which we are all born. And so the fact that I did not speak Auca could only prove to the Indians that I was retarded. And to try to get across to them exactly what it was that I was trying to do was very difficult. And all you can do to reduce an unwritten language to writing is to sit there and try to write down what people say. You don't have any textbooks, you don't have any interpreter because there's no other language into which it can be interpreted. You can't buy Berlitz school records or anything of that sort. So I would be sitting there with my little notebook and making tapes, which I would very laboriously transcribe. I discovered that the only way in which I could get an exact repetition of what somebody had said was by a tape recorder. And so here was Gikita sitting there talking into the microphone, saying things like that. Now I'll repeat what I said to you a minute ago, and you just try to imagine writing that down without getting a repetition the second time. Now that means, and so I speared them, and those foreigners died. Gikita was telling me the story on tape of how he and 4 other Auca Indians had speared my husband to death. Back in 1956, before some of you were born, but there are people here I see that are old enough to remember back that far, there were 5 American missionaries who had attempted to reach this tribe of Indians with the gospel.
Okay, you can go back and watch the whole entire thing if you'd like. I have another video that I would like to play. I can't play the whole thing. Yeah, because of strange copyright rules or something. But it's you can watch the whole thing too. It's Beyond the Gates, Operation Auca, and it's a really nice video. But you probably have to watch it yourself, the whole thing. I probably can't play the whole thing, but anyway, let me see if I can advance. Nate St. Jim Elliott. Anyway. Second World War
had ended in victory, and new excitement and hope was in the air. Nate St., Jim Elliott, and Ed McCully attended Wheaton College together just outside of Chicago. Nate had served as a mechanic in the war and was 2 years ahead of Jim and Ed. He left for Ecuador with his new bride Marge to pursue his 2 greatest passions, which were flying and missions. Jim Elliott and Ed McCully graduated 2 years later in 1949. Jim had asked Ed to consider joining him in the mission field, but Ed was getting married soon to Mary Lou Hobeth and was studying to be a lawyer. Pete Fleming, a philosophy major from the University of Washington, was a good friend of Jim Elliott. He went with Jim to Ecuador in January of 1952. Elizabeth Howard arrived in Ecuador to work in missions a few months after Jim and Pete. She had dated Jim in college and graduated a year ahead of him. There was a terrible storm in Shandia, and the rising river destroyed the new base. This tragedy was a turning point. Ed and Mary Lou McCully came down to Ecuador to rebuild the base. Elizabeth Howard also came to help. Jim Elliott asked Elizabeth to be his wife. Shortly after that, Pete renewed his courtship with Olive Ainsley. They were married in the United States. Pete and Olive were stationed in Puyapungo. Jim and Elizabeth in Shandia. Ed and Mary Lou in Otahuno. The common contact for them all was the Saint Base in Shelmetta. The airplane was the only efficient means to deliver supplies. Where there was no runway, Nate invented ways to make those deliveries. Nate and Marge soon found that people in the jungle often needed more medical care than the missionaries could give. They wanted to build a hospital and asked Roger Yadarian, another missionary stationed with his family in Mikuma, to do it. Then one day, Nate and Ed flew over Auca territory and spotted Auca houses. The desire to reach these people united these men and their families together in a common purpose. Nate devised a way to drop a bucket from a long line in the airplane. In this way, they were able to give gifts to the Aucas and later receive gifts in return. One day, Nate spotted a sandbar he thought he could land on, and they made plans for face-to-face contact. The term Auca is Quechua for naked savage. It shows just how isolated the tribe was, for at that time, no one knew the tribe called themselves Waodani. They were the most violent society ever documented by anthropologists. 6 out of every 10 adult Waodani deaths were from homicide. Love drove the missionary families to go to whatever length they had to in order for the Waodani to hear about Jesus Christ. Jim Elliott wrote in his journals, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain that which he can never lose." On Sunday, January 8th, the men were at the sandbar they named Palm Beach, and Nate was to make radio contact with Marge at 4:30. The contact never came.
It's a Stephen Curtis Chapman video, so it's got his songs in it. I don't know if they'll cut me out, whatever. But it's a nice video. And show some of the pictures and everything. And it shows, some of the relationships that have resulted from the missionary work,
With us were Minkai, Kimo, Dewey, and Dawa, who all took part in the attack at Palm Beach. They are elders in the Waodani Church today. After the men were speared, Dayuma was able to bring Rachel, Elizabeth, and Valerie to live with the tribe. Rachel and Dayuma translated God's carvings, which Dayuma taught to the Waodani. Not everyone in the tribe became a God follower, but still the impact of God's carvings affected the entire Waodani society. The homicide rate among the Waodani dropped 90% within 2 years of the women arriving. In 1963, 2 of Nate and Marge Saint's children, Steve and Kathy, were baptized by chemo. Who could have known what would come of this seeming tragedy?
Okay, it's a really nice video if you watch the whole thing.
When the Waodani elders heard about the violence in our country, like the school shootings from Heath High School in Paducah, Kentucky, the school I graduated from, and Columbine High School in Colorado, they said, that's exactly how we used to live. So they gave permission to Bearing Fruit Communications to make a feature-length documentary film called Beyond the Gates, because they want others to know their story so that others might walk God's trail.
Another concert.
In 1995, Steve and his family came to live with the Waodani at their request. Soon after that, his children started calling Minkai grandfather. In 2000, Steve and Jenny's only daughter, Stephanie, died of a sudden brain hemorrhage. Minkai and Tomento were visiting, and Minkai comforted the Saint family. He couldn't replace their grandfather, Nate. But he was a grandfather to them, and his presence expressed the hope of eternity. You can express that hope to the world around you as you live out loud. The Waodani are sharing their story, and it's our turn to share ours. I'm Stephen Curtis Chapman, right here in the Amazon jungle of Ecuador, from everyone in the Waodani Church. Thanks for watching.
Stephen Curtis Chapman from the Amazon jungle. Okay, I think I have one more thing that I wanted to watch, or I could watch. That would be this video here. It's pretty cool.
The Bible says that we should love our neighbors as ourselves, and that there's no greater love than that a man should lay down his life for his brother. Dad and his friends considered the Waodani, even though they didn't know them, to be their neighbors, and that's what they came here to do. Dad killed here, but Kathy and I were baptized along with Iniwa and one of the young ladies that Kathy used to play with. But I wanted my kids to see that the beach is a real place here where Dad was killed. And I want them to know that God's love is real and that what He calls us to, if we give ourselves to Him, that He'll see to it that finally it makes sense, especially in eternity's values.
Check out the Amazon rainforest.
When our grandchildren came up with the idea of our whole family going down to Ecuador together, I thought, boy, wouldn't that be incredible? And then immediately thought, no, I mean, it can't happen. Everybody organizing their schedules, so many kids getting passports. We had a big group to get to Ecuador, and going to Quito was one thing. Getting to Shell was another thing, but then the multiple challenges of getting, me, an incomplete quadriplegic, into the jungles, that just was a huge barrier to get over. Yeah, it was just very humbling to see all the special preparations that they had to make to allow me to be part of this dream last visit to Ecuador. When Jenny and I were living in Ecuador, Rick LaBeouf loaned us his Cessna bush plane, and I think I made 3,300 flights in that little plane, most of them, out of one short jungle strip over a ridge or two or three and rivers, and then boom, down into the jungles again. But this time it was going to be a new experience for me. To take off from Shell, and as we flew out over the jungles, I was recognizing airstrips that I used to land at, and Gala was telling me, well, we don't use that airstrip anymore because now the road goes there. And as we passed into Waurani territory, we were following the Ewenguno, or in Spanish, the Curaray River, which I could see Tonyampare, the little village and a special place in the river where the river's forced to go straight. That's where Dad found that longer sandbar where he landed, and where he and Roger and Pete and Ed and Jim were killed. And then it was time to let down into Sapino, and to see how much work the Waurani, and especially Minkai's family, had gone to carve that little jungle airstrip out of that dense Amazon rainforest. It was just, brought so many memories back. I would have rather trade places with Gallo and gotten a chance to fly that plane in, but when we finally got up to the camp after, maybe half an hour on this winding river, we pulled up to the bank and looked up, and there was Kimo, the first warrior who decided that he wanted to walk this new trail. His wife Dawa, who is considered to be my tribal grandmother, she accepted the gospel even before Aunt Rachel and Aunt Betty went in to live with the Waurani. Hey, Dawa, it was very, very special to get to spend day and a half with the Waurani, and we heard a week later that Dawa had died. So to get to see my tribal grandmother one more time, last time I was in Kimo and Minkai and Dewey and Ompore and Epa and Tomo and Kangawanto and a bunch of the young people that are now taking more and more responsibility. To see them with all of our kids, it just was, it was almost an emotional overload for me, in a happy way, in a very happy and moving way. Jenny said, when kids would say, "Hey, Peepaw, did you get to go hunting when you're down here?" And they had gone fishing, and they told me, and I said, "Yeah, did you catch any catfish?" And they had, and those are really, really good eating. And then they had speared a little caiman, and Jenny just kept saying to the kids when they'd say, "And did you get to do this?" And, "Oh man, we got to watch them do this." And Jenny would say, yeah, isn't that amazing? Then she'd turn to me and say, "Boy, we've had a lot of really incredible experiences in our life, haven't we?" And to think that God would have written written little Stevie Saint and wonderful, beautiful, sweet Jenny into this story that now is 2 generations beyond us. Very incredible, very, very moving. I think it didn't really hit me until we were on our way back to Quito that this was the last trip, It's so easy to think that life just goes on. I have the advantage with, my the crippling effects of quadriplegia and days when I can't even get out of bed and pain is so terrible. I've realized more than most people at this age how short life is, but it really came home as we were heading back up in the mountains, getting ready to fly back to the States, that that whole foundation of my life in Ecuador and all those friends, that we can't hang on to that. It's except to pass it on to the next generation and trust life to them, and then to trust them to lead the next generation after them and after them. And I just realized that raising children and then children raising children, those values are so easy to be lost. But to realize that our children and our wonderful daughters-in-law, think of them more as daughters, that they have taken the gospel into their lives and believe it and live it, and now are passing it on to our grandchildren. I don't know if mom and dad can see from heaven could see, but I just kept thinking, boy, I hope they can see. I hope they can see their great grandchildren now endorsing the truths that they believed and that they went to Ecuador to share with people that never knew, and that the Waurani and staff there at ITEC Ecuador have adopted for their own. It just, I just realized what a blessing it is that even our grandchildren, mom and dad's great-grandchildren, are adopting the precepts and the values that mom and dad went to Ecuador to share with people who had never heard. This whole trip was what we call, Ginny and I call, a happy, sad event. So happy to have been able to do it, and so sad that this is really the last time, short of a miracle.
Soon we'll come to the end of life's
Johnny Cash. I hope they don't
and perhaps
cut me for that.
never meet anymore. Till we gather in heaven. Beyond that, if we never meet
It's a shame you can't even play any music. Anyway, I guess you get the idea. Okay, StreamYard. There we go. What we got here? Knock this out before it starts playing some more. Okay, what do we got? We got Patrick Caricas. What's this? It's a story of when I was growing up that we heard a lot about. Story of the Auca Indians and the 4 missionaries that went in to reach them with the gospel. And they were the most savage tribe in South America. They had a homicide rate of 1 in 6 or something like that. And then so 4 missionaries were killed, and then their wives went into the Indian tribe and reached them with the gospel and translated the Bible into their language so that they could know the Word of God in their own language. And it wasn't King James. Kind of fanatic for my. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a little bit of culture shock, isn't it, Jim? This is yeah, it's a little bit of culture shock for sure, because people just don't understand what missionaries are all about, you know. And it's about reaching people with the truth of the gospel of Christ. And that's basically who I am, you know. I'm a missionary kid from the Amazon jungle. But I don't know if anybody is interested in having a discussion. I don't know. I'll see. I gotta find my thing. Yeah, well, it's you know, I could watch these videos for like hours, videos like that, because of course I can relate to them and they mean a lot to me, and it's basically the history of my life. You know, not my life, but as I was brought up. Jim, how you doing?
We got
Oops, hold on. I gotta adjust my speaker here. Hold on a second. Let me see. Um, speaker. Okay. Okay, there. I'm better now. Go ahead.
okay. Sound good?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
Nice and clear over here. Okay, good. Yeah, I knew you from your past with your missionary aspects, and some of the contrary, negative attitudes that you had back in the day were some for your speech and stuff. And I remember you were speaking to me how you actually caught malaria or some type of something that really sickened you.
Yeah, that was one time. And
Yeah.
when I was 3 years old, I got bit by my pet dog. Had rabies, and it had to have 50 shots in the stomach.
Oh, was that not related to anything? Did you have a related?
No related ailment. No,
Okay, okay, nothing from like an like when you were on a mission. When you did you have a disease like?
I did have malaria. Yeah.
Yes, okay, but would you say the rabies is what affected you the most? Or
No, it's just like the first thing that I remember.
yeah,
I was 3 years old.
yeah.
I mean, I remember moving into the house. I remember leaving the other house, moving into this house, and I was only 3 years old. And I got a pet dog. I remember that. And then
And what location was this again?
the city of Manaus in the Amazon jungle, the state of
Yeah,
Amazonas.
right. And you were 3.
Yeah,
Wow, man, that is just amazing.
yeah,
Just an amazing thing to think about. Like, I have 5 children, and I've been married 32 years,
yeah,
and I just cannot imagine the parents taking, you down there to the jungle,
yeah.
and well, I
The
mean, like
city. It was the city, but it was still, dangerous.
tropic in the sense, but you had to go explore beyond the city for the mission relief, correct?
Yeah, I would go when I would go to school. I got older and I went to a school that was downriver,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be in the Amazon jungle. I could actually show that on the.
Yeah, no, I've seen some of that before. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, very interesting. Though I really like that share that you just gave. It just gives a perspective. Like when you look at some types of dedications, fervorance, some type of zeal, a quest. These words come into my head when I see people like this, and then you see somebody that has knowledge of this because firsthand you've been there.
yeah,
And then to express yourself through sharing these videos, I find it quite enlightening, and I thank you very much for that. That's really nice of you.
yeah,
Very, very cool to show that side of you, and that's hence the name Jungle Jargon.
yep,
Yep. And hey, I'm looking to talk to you on a couple other subjects. I don't want to get off track here and distract you from anything, and I will gladly leave if you need me to. But I wanted to talk about a guy out of South Africa named Walter Veith, and he has got a video on dairy, and it's kind of an interesting thing. And I thought that you and I could maybe go through the video one day and just do a stream and cut it up and take a peek at it. I don't think we're getting copyrights on it whatsoever. He's pretty free for sharing everything. But it'd be interesting to talk about dairy because my position is that there's a codon, when mothers wean off the children, so there's a genetic code, within the DNA that will shut down for the woman to have the need to lactate, and these things are, I think, can be, given some light, about the issues with diet. I think that there's a interspecies, somehow.
Okay. How about if we just shut this one down and I'll do another one? What's the name? How do you spell the Walter thing? Walter?
I think he is at VEITH. Yeah. You know what? I can just send you over in our private chat area.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do that right now.
Okay, so I'll shut this one down. But if I know how to spell VEITH?
Yeah, VEITH. Yeah, Walter Veith. Yeah.
Okay, try that.
He has a PhD. He's also, he's a Seventh-day Adventist. He's got,
Okay, so I'll go ahead and shut this down. We'll be right back with another broadcast.
Yeah, why don't you give me, it's bad timing for me right now. I was touching bases on this, so looking forward to a future situation. Just because my son is back, with this COVID thing, he is.
Oh, so you're not able to do it now? We can do it later. Yeah.
Either way, I want to discuss it, but I want to be a little bit more prepared.
Okay.
Because my wife will be shortly returning from work, and my son has his girlfriend with him staying here, and I want to be a polite host if they come back home, and was going to prepare some food.
Yeah. Okay, that's no problem.
Okay. So yeah, but I would like to, if you wouldn't mind. Maybe I'm on the West Coast of California.
Yeah.
And I don't know. By the way, congratulations on your retirement. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I hope did all the paperwork go through? Is everything good?
Not yet. Not yet. It's a little bit up in the air, but
oh boy. Yeah.
But they said everything's okay. They wrote back and said stop writing that everything's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I wish you all the best on that too, by the way, because you deserve it. You deserve it. You put up with it. You fought through it and you won. And my book, absolutely. So yeah, maybe I'm free. All day, midday tomorrow. So I'm on the West Coast. I would like to 11 o'clock.
Yeah, tomorrow's my last day of work. I gotta go back.
Are you kidding me? Okay, what time do you get off?
So I gotta go there. I'll probably be back after maybe around this time. Yeah, tomorrow.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit earlier, or this time maybe 4, maybe.
Are you on the same time zone? Am I?
No, this is it's 6:30 right here right now. So
okay, so you're 3 hours ahead of me. So I'm 3. Yeah.
2 years. 2 hours earlier is okay.
Yeah, 2 hours. Yeah, about 1. Yeah, that'd be good. Yes.
Okay.
That'd be good. Mm-hmm.
All right. So when I come back from work, then I'll.
Yeah, and then I will. I don't know. Can can we like send each other messages through your YouTube channels? Because I did set one up.
You could send it to Jungle Jargon Gmail.
Okay, so it's junglejargon@gmail.com.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
connected.
Okay, cool. I will send you that from my email account. Then you will have that, and then yeah, I would like to discuss because I think you're going to get deep on this one about interspecies, and I think you have a lot of knowledge on this. And I don't know your diet, and I don't care about your diet, but as you maybe not remembered, or maybe you have remembered, but I'm a vegan, right?
Yeah.
And so I have raised 5 children. None of them vegan throughout, I would say at least 14, 15. I do believe in that there's a certain amount of fat that's developable for the brain, joints, ligaments, and tissues. I think there's a certain amount of fat that has to be in the diet. And so, yeah, it could be a very interesting discussion. But my main focus would be on casein, and my main focus would be talking about how casein would be like something that is not beneficial.
Casein, what's casein?
Casein is the byproduct of milk. It's like in cheese, what they call casein. That's the actual protein that makes cheese stringy and chewy, and makes it gooey, right?
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I look forward to talking to you about this, because the only reason I started my YouTube channel, and I haven't done anything, I just left it blank. I may eventually do something again, but only with having a few discussions with you first. But yeah, so like I said, I started my YouTube channel just to get back in contact with you. I think you have a lot of things that are going on in this modern world, and that you provided, unfortunately, a really great presentation the other day, and none of your screen shares were working, and we had to listen to it, and it was really great, and all the path routes of everything you were showing on continents. Unfortunately, it didn't work. And
then well, later on it did show up. I did, because I remember I didn't screen share.
Did you redo it, or did you?
No, I after a while I figured out.
Oh yeah, I saw that it worked afterwards, right? Yeah, but in the beginning,
yeah.
Oh, it was terrible, because all the good stuff you were talking about was there, and it's so blue. I think you actually should redo that, by the way.
Yeah, well, I've done other ones, and I'll do it again.
All right. Well, God bless, brother. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow, and if there's anything else you want to ask me, let me know, because I just want to jump in the kitchen. All
right.
Get some food going here.
All right, I'll see you then tomorrow when I get back off from work.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.